Airline Weekly columnist Seth Kaplan joins us. And, you know, for the average traveler, what do you think this means when they try to purchase a ticket? Not now, but when the merger takes place maybe a year from now.
Well, on one hand, it would be dishonest to say, look, this is going to have no impact on airfares. I mean, after all, one reason why companies in any industry, and certainly airlines are no exception, merge is to reduce competition a bit and maybe push up prices just a little bit. But on the other hand, it's simply not true to say airfares are going to skyrocket. We've had several of these mergers. Yes, airfares are a bit higher than they were a few years ago, but they're still a very good deal in historical terms.
Does this get by the antitrust division of the Department of Justice? Because, you know, there are always concerns of monopolies. In 12 years, we've gone in the U.S. from 10 major carriers to 4.
Great question. It's an especially good question when you think that even under the Bush administration just several years back, when U.S. Airways wanted to buy Delta, that deal fell apart largely on fears that the Department of Justice under Bush was going to say no to that. Of course, a more pro-business administration. So it's a fair question to ask, but it's very unlikely that the government is going to stop this. This merger is a lot more like United Continental, which under the Obama administration was approved, as well as Delta Northwest. Those mergers didn't create the kinds of monopoly markets that people feared Delta and U.S. Airways would have created.
You know, my wife turned to me this morning and says, what's going to happen to our frequent flyer miles? Are they going to go away? I said, well, probably not, because then they'd be hit with a myriad of lawsuits. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly, and you certainly wouldn't want to kill the goose, so to speak, because those frequent flyer programs are very much the golden egg for these airlines. Actually, some good news in this regard for consumers. Yeah, on one hand, you might pay a bit more for airfares. On the other hand, let's say you have some miles with American and some with U.S. Airways. Well, they're going to go ahead and put those mileage balances together, and maybe you'll now have enough for a free trip. On the other hand, certainly these are airlines that, yes, are consolidating, little less competition. They might not have to compete as desperately for your business, so don't be surprised if it gets just a bit harder to actually get that free seat or that upgrade that you're chasing.
You know, Seth, what's interesting is if you look at a map, there's little overlap in these two networks. So could that mean that customers who happen to be tied to one airline, and a lot of people are, will enjoy expanded route and flight options?
Yeah, and that's one benefit. You know, again, alongside perhaps slightly higher airfares, we now have an airline industry that's able to offer more to customers. First of all, we have airlines that now are no longer just struggling to get through the day, able to invest in their product, provide in-flight Wi-Fi and all of that, and yes, able to offer broader global networks. That's one benefit. These airlines, by the way, compete head-to-head on literally only about a half dozen non-stop routes. Yeah. So yes, if you're flying between Charlotte and Dallas, those two choices, American and U.S. Airways, might now be one for nonstop, certainly other connecting options. More commonly, a lot of people who travel, let's say, between mid-sized cities, between Raleigh, Durham, and Salt Lake City, might not have a nonstop option. They might have 5 connecting options. Those 5 might now be 4.
Well, the American CEO says everybody's going to have an unparalleled travel experience. That sounds like a load of you-know-what you find out on the farm. All right, Seth Kaplan, good to see you. Thanks, Seth.